Awesome. All right, so I want to talk about two things. It's important. It goes along. We talked about identity, right, with that before, but I want to switch it up a little bit. I want to talk about two main things. Marketing. What does that mean?
Drawing attention.
That's a great way to branding. So we got attention. What else? Branding. What else? Advertising, which should be like what? Spending money, right? I'm spending money. We do a lot of that. Pulling people in. Exposure. What else? So the main goal of marketing is really one thing. What do you think it is? To influence. That's it, right? To influence somebody. To do what? To do business with you, to take action, to make something, think a certain way. And I want you guys to really, the reason I'm teaching this, I want you guys to understand and think, and I'm going to have you consider that marketing going forward to be able to survive in a big way is not what you do, it's who you are. There's going to be two main things that I want you guys to understand, that you as a marketer has to become your identity in 2026 to really separate from the noise. There's so much noise out there in terms of things on social media, things they're seeing from everything else on TikTok, Facebook, Google, ChatGPT, Claude, all of them right now. They're just massive amounts of just noise. And so if I can understand and get really good and even better at marketing, I'm able to be the signal that's inside the noise. Does that make sense? They're on 10 different agents' websites, right? And so you have to be good at doing what? Influencing them through what? Marketing. Words. Right? Words in email, words in a text message, words in my video to them, words in an audio message to them. I have to be really good at marketing, understanding to, like somebody else said it, I got to pull them in and I got to influence them, right? And so I want you guys to understand, like, part of the goal for what you're looking at in 2026 is that I'm a marketer. I taught this a little bit before, but we hammered this a lot yesterday in Warrior, which is important, right? The second piece of this, right, is I'm a closer. What does that mean, you think? If it meant to close, what does that mean? Obviously, like selling in terms of that. Well, what does that mean? Marketing, right? And they're close. And I even had to like do a little bit of research going back and forth on this when I was prepping for this. But here's the thing. I want to have you consider that closing is really one thing. Having them make a decision. Right? I have to make the decision. So this is the moment they make a decision, right? So like, I market, influence. If marketing and influence is done correctly, guess what? The close is very seamless. The sale is very easy. And the better I am at marketing, the easier the sale. Does it make sense? And so if I'm not good at marketing the front end, it becomes a very hard close on the back end, which makes things much more difficult. And maybe consider that closing, I want you guys to understand the biggest thing that you have to overcome with closing is you have to change and be really good at changing their worldview. I'm combining like a bunch of different trainings in one, obviously a little bit of seduction in here. But like these are what I want you guys to write this down on your notes from 2026 of like, I'm a marketer, I'm a closer. I've thought about this a lot. And most people like, if that's part of my identity, what does that mean I need to do? Get good, right? And so if I get good at it, what does that mean? I got to practice and study it, right? And so let me ask you this. In the last 7 days, who here studied marketing for more than 1 hour? Right? Me. Make sense? So in the last 7 days, who studied closing more than 1 hour? Got it. So if I know the most important thing I can do is close people, what do I got to make sure I'm doing here? If I want to be the identity as a closer, I've got to do what? I've got to study it, right? I've got to make sure that I'm pushing hard to learn to master this, because these two are what makes the difference in sales. Do you guys agree? If I know these are the two most important things in sales, the two most important things that I can do to change my life in 2026, I got to make sure that I take time to invest in what? Learning it, mastering it. I've spent decades studying this over and over and over and over. Garrett pulled me in a call yesterday and asked me a bunch of questions because I've studied his stuff for, I don't know, hundreds of hours probably. Overall, in terms of strategic seduction, how things work. But you have to understand that marketing, I want you guys to consider that marketing and closing is an identity, right? It's an identity becomes of who you are. in what you do and how you think through everything. And so even if I buy somebody's product, I'm thinking through the process of how are they selling me on this. I'm not just looking at the process, I'm looking at what they say to me, what they do. And so I can understand of like what makes me make decisions so that I can influence other people in how they make decisions. Does that make sense? Which is very, very important. But I want you guys to understand, you're not going to change this unless you do what? Study it. But this stuff matters, right? This matters in everything. And the problem is most people can't see it. And so part of the reason I want to teach this was, ironically, we talked about it yesterday in Warrior. I'll go deeper in this. But like I had an issue yesterday, and I'll kind of share it. So I'll pick on you just because I think it's a great example. You know, if you don't mind, I mean, it's nothing personal on it. We have a seller who wanted out the agreement, right? We're on day 55. So they're all right. They're happy about it. She, going back to the story, she reached out last week and said, hey, can you do some research for me and then find out what to do, right? And then she texted on Sunday, and then she said she can't wait till Monday. And then you said you just did some research, and then what?
Responded back to her via text.
Okay, and just said, hey, what?
Based off of the data, we need to be at this price to this price range.
Got it. So if I went back and I went through that process, and so I started like, all right, well, let me look and see what's going on, right? I'm like, all right, I'll pull up it's a townhouse condo. In that complex, there is 11 listed, right? Of the 11, there's not been a single sale since, I think it's 9/something/2025. We didn't list until November. So not a single sale since September in this complex, right? There's 11 listed. We're the 9th most expensive, right? What do you think the chances of us selling are? There is not a chance in hell we're ever going to sell at that price. But the problem is we have what? A client who believes that it should be selling. You guys with me on this? Whose fault is that? Ours, right? And so I have to understand that. And so here's what my big breakthrough is. I'm teaching this part. So I start going through it. I start looking at the data. Okay, well, let me look at the data MLS. Data MLS. Anybody know what the numbers were last month for condos prices? This is something you guys should know. Prices over down 10% last month. Just last month, right? Anybody know the average days on market for a condo to sell? 130 days. So think about this. We have a client who's on day 55 in a place where the average sale takes 130 days to sell. We're $20,000 above the highest sell in there. And, right, they're wanting to cancel because they're mad it hasn't sold on day 55. And that comes down to what? Manage expectations. And so here's what I'm getting at. What would have been different, do you think, that you could have done to change the outcome of the conversation?
Been more, definitely spent more time in reference to setting proper expectations based off of the inventory.
All right, and let's go straight to Sunday.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I got the moment. This lady's coming at me, wants me to do this. What could I have done differently? Okay, okay, what else? That's possible. Huh? I got to show her. So if I send a text message, hey, I know you're at 190, but you should be at 170, what's she going to say? Scale of 1 to 10, how good's my marketing there? 0. Right? I'm thinking like, well, damn, I'd be pissed too, because you know what? No one's even shown me the data or the actual story, the reason of why this should be priced at $170,000. So I'm like, dude, if you look at the data, but I'm viewing this from the identity of what? A marketer, not a realtor. So I'm like, well, if I can take a screenshot, here's all the listings in your neighborhood. Here's 15 arrows that show you're the 9th most expensive out of 11. And there's 8 other ones below us, some of which are the same size or nicer. But we're number, and I can put that together with also, here's another screenshot of the marketplace that shows prices last month were down 10% alone, right? In addition to that, the average days on market is 130. We're on day 55. And so if I present that to them in a place of a marketer, what am I starting to do there? Influence them. Now I also take that, I do a video on top of that and say, hey, look, here's the data, here's this. And I didn't really have time to do a great video last night because it was 7 o'clock at night. But the reality is I just went through it and it's like, it's indisputable, right? And so that's the reality. And she was going at you hard, right? I think on the phone or something. Yeah. But why is that? She hasn't seen the comps, right? So like, How do I know that I can't defend against something they can't actually see? And so this is what I'm talking about. In marketing, a lot of times, it's not just somebody on a billboard. It's not just somebody sending, ads out on Google. This is like, how am I constantly putting my words together to influence my clients' decisions so they can see what's going on in the marketplace? Does that make sense? And so if I do the marketing right, and I put that package together in a way to get them to correct the price, and I understand, hey, look, no matter what you did, like I said all the time, I could put Fox News in the front driveway 7 days a week. There's no way in hell it's ever going to sell at that price. Why? There's 8 others less than you, and not a single one of them have sold. Oh yeah, by the way, we sold 2 of the last 3 sales in the entire complex in the last 12 months. So if anybody could sell it, we could sell it. But guess what? No one wants to buy it because why? It's 8 times more expensive than anything else out there. Yes, there's some nuances. One garage, one doesn't have a garage. But the reality is there's many more that are less that are same square footage. And here's a question. Am I going to pay $40,000 more for a two-story townhouse versus single condo? Probably not. And so part of me understanding is if I'm a marketer, I have to say, hey, what can I do in terms of visuals, words, videos to influence my client or potential client or lead so that makes my ability to change their worldview, what? A lot easier. Does this make sense? And so when I was going back through this and even stacked this morning, it's like, look, we've got to get a lot better at our identity about this, right? And that was my question of like, even when I was going through some of our numbers in conversion, I'm like, do we have all closures? No. And what worries me is we don't have all closures and all is that we don't have people putting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week in just learning how to close. And that's just what? Psychology. And both of these are a skill set. That's it. Right? And so it's important for us to understand of like, you understand that I'm either selling or being sold every single part of the day. That client's going to sell me on what they think the property's worth, or I'm going to sell them what I think it's worth. If I just go strictly on emotions and words on the phone, guess what? I'm screwed. And most of the sellers, right, I send them an email, has the data, you're the 8th most expensive, you're $20,000 above the highest sale, which also happened to be over 6 months ago, right? 4 months ago. Nothing sold since we listed it. So I go all this stuff and they want to argue with me, what do I say? Hey, I totally appreciate that. Tim, you're right, you feel that way, but guess what? Unfortunately, it's math. Just like gravity. I can argue with gravity all I want to, but if I jump off the roof of this building, guess what happens? I don't gotta like gravity, and I don't really like gravity. But guess what happens? It's gonna slap me in the face if I jump off this roof. Just like the 8 of the comps that are below you right now that aren't selling either. And so we have a decision to make. We can keep where we're at and pray and hope that you hit the lottery, or you can correct it to get where it needs to be. But reality is it's not me or my fault. Does this make sense? And so we have to understand no matter what I'm doing, and the reason I'm teaching this is because it's relevant to everybody in this room. On your buyer side stuff in terms of how good your offers are being done, how many times the buyers say, what should I offer, and you just make up a friggin' number, or you do the comps yourself and tell them without actually showing them, right? And telling's not selling. You have to make sure you're showing people how things work and what to do, and so I need you guys to be good at doing both. Marketing is like the jab before the punch. Does this make sense? And so I jab them a couple of times with the marketing. Here's a piece. Here's what you need to do. Here's what happens. And then here's how I make the decision. And this is done through a set of what? Through questions, right? Word tracks, I'd say. And then obviously I'm going to go straight for closes, which is them making a decision. But this goes back to what we talked about yesterday. So look at the number yesterday. Had how many conversations yesterday, Ryan? 188, right? And how many appointments? 27. So what do you guys think the problem is? 188 conversations, 27 appointments. Closing, hands down. Right? So I get an objection, what happens? Fold, right? And this comes back to being closed. So what's closer to? Ask better questions, ask more questions, right? They ask better ones in terms of get out of whatever objection they have, knowing that they're on the site for a reason, looking for some reason. I go back and then reclose again. That's just simply a skill set. But if I'm doing 0 hours a week studying it, even though I have access to Grant Cardone, to Jordan Belfort, to Jerry Minor, to all that stuff, I'm not going to get any better than I'm at currently. And so I want you guys to understand, in 2026, the secret for you, the hack for anybody in here, is if you just master this, understand, this is my identity. I'm a marketer. I want you to see everything in the world as marketing. I go to a restaurant, analyze everything about the marketing. And it's everything about the process anybody's doing, right? Any business I go through. And it's important to understand that you're breaking that down of like, okay, how does this work? How do I get better at this? And how do I influence my clients? So where can you guys get a lot better at this? To your buyer leads. What do you think? Yes. Videos, right? To my clients. And I'll get a little bit deeper, but my emails to clients, like my one-on-one stuff, right, which updates. So I want to show them I'm the expert in terms of what I do. And there's a lot of different pieces of marketing, which we'll talk about in a minute. And there's like marketing, there's two types of marketing. There's marketing, which is more like general influence. And there's this thing called, which I've studied a lot for years, called direct response marketing. That's what I've been a big student of. My mentor early on, Dan Kennedy, kind of created that. But what do you guys think direct response marketing means? It kind of. They're all, yes. I'm looking for a direct response, a direct action from that marketing. So that means they raise their hand, they respond back to me. I need to get a direct response from that person in whatever the marketing is. And so sometimes my email may be to educate them, but sometimes my email may be to get a direct response back. And I have to make sure I'm good at understanding both. For part of that, you can understand language and psychology and how people think and really understand what people's pain and their issues are. Does that make sense? And so that's something that's important for us to make sure we're understanding. But I want you guys to write down that there's two main things that if you understand what's my main marketing message to my clients, and this is from a conversion standpoint. There's the one we talked about, the example of Carlos. There's also like how am I converting leads? I want you guys to understand. So my message consistently for conversion, there's two main things. Who you are, what you do. Who you are and what you do. And so anybody you're talking with is typically on 5, 6, 7, 8 different websites, right? And so if I'm looking to convert my people to high level, I probably need to do what? Stand out. And how can I do that? That's a really amazing way because that explains what? Who I am and what I do, right? But ultimately, I want to get to my people where I can build a market to them. Hey, also, we had a great conversation on the phone, and you guys looking to move down from New Jersey, but I wanted to shoot you this quick video just so you know who I am and exactly what I do, right? And then I have a video that talks about me, my story, who I am, my success in real estate, what I've done, and oh yeah, by the way, I specialize in people relocating from other states just like yourself. Is that going to be likely to pull them in, you think? Is that going to differentiate from the other 6 agents who just set up on email and let them just hope and pray they come back to them? Right, you have to get really good right now at being the signal within the noise. The noise is just all the static, and so you're going to go through all the radio stations, right? You start getting next, you go to like a new location, you get like a rental car, and you just start trying to find stations, right? All of them suck, and all of a sudden what happens? Boom, it pops in. That's the signal among all the noise. You got to be the one that dials in the actual music, the actual conversation among all the noise, and the noise is what all the other agents are out there sending them generic that doesn't talk about what? Who you are and what you do. No matter what it is, I specialize in that, right? Because we can do all of that, but I want them to understand, look, I'm very knowledgeable in what you do. The type of real estate that you're looking for, whether it be investment property or second home or relocation. Hey, we work with buyers like you all the time. We work with listings like you all the time. I help many other clients like yourself, but it's important that we're taking time to get good at, number one, articulating who you are. Most of you, if you sit down with, hey, look, tell me who you are, like, it's not really easy to tell. Why? You haven't really practiced and you don't talk about yourself too much. And so if I know the client cares about that more than anything, I probably need to be pretty good at what? Telling my story about who I am, where I came from, what I did, right? And so that's something that makes a big difference. That number one, you have to create the story. And so how can I do that? Well, you have a lot of great tools today, like ChatGPT, other things. Hey, go through, I want you to interview me. 10 different questions, one question at a time. Tell me, identify my story, who I am, what I do in real estate, right? And you can go through and create that story, but it's important you find a way to it. Now, if you're just fairly new in real estate, guess what? You can still create a story about where you're from, what you do, your background, things that you did before, whatever it is, make a big difference, right? And as you're here longer, it makes a bigger difference in terms of how you do that. Questions about that? What are you hearing so far with that? Yeah, I want you guys to understand, like, you got to make sure that, number one, you're good at cutting through the noise. And Lisa nailed it. The most important thing that you can really do is get attention. And so what does that mean? I have to be able to cut through that noise right now. That's where you stop people in a scroll. That's things like good subject lines, good initial headers in your email, right, to break through what all the other people are saying out there. Why do you think Jake Paul makes so much money? Attention. He understands that attention is currency in the current marketplace, right? Hey, dude got, what, $90 million in one night the other week, right? So like him or dislike him, he's got a lot of damn money. He's got a Global Express jet, which is like, I don't know, $80 million jet. Like that's just his own, right? So like the reality, and every flight you hop on is 100, 150 grand per flight. Like that's just next level. But why is he able to do that? He's able to get attention. Right? And so obviously we won't use that type of attention. Understand, you got to be able to make sure that you can cut through the noise. And I got to get really good at words. Well, how do I do that? I got to get good at practicing, right? And so I want you guys to study it. There's lots of things you can study. We've talked about this before. If you want to get good at marketing this year, there's three main things that you can study. Three main really people. Number one, Alex Hormozi is really good. Talked about him a lot. Yep. So I went back and started reading his $100 million models book. Alex Hormozi. He owns acquisitions.com. He just made $100 million in one day on a book launch. Pretty safe to say he's pretty good at marketing, right? And that was like 2 months ago. The second person I recommend studying, Dan Kennedy. He's my initial mentor. Really, really good about marketing. Understand that. He's got the No BS series. I've read almost all of his books. All of his books I have read, actually. And then also, Russell Brunson, he's really good. Those are three really good ones to kind of read, right? You just want to start studying. The reason I want you guys to put time in, an understanding of like, how do I get better at differentiating this? How do I get at marketing? And this goes to your social too, right? So we were talking on the call yesterday of like, there's two things that have to happen in marketing. Number one is attention. Number two is trust. And so the second most important thing you're doing in marketing is building trust. And so this is important to understand of like, I got to make sure I'm building trust in my communication. So part of my doing that is rather than just going to figure it out on their own or asking people, I'm going to tell them who I am myself through my own marketing. But the other thing, you're social. They're talking about this, and this is kind of, I'll talk about this a little bit later. But like in the old days, you would go to a job, you would hand them your resume, right? You go in, have a physical resume. The resume now is not a paper resume, it's your social footprint. And so if they go in and look at you, and this we were talking about on the call yesterday, it's like if they look you up and your last post was from 2024, what do they think? I don't trust this person. Not that they're not that good. I don't even trust them. Why? Because they're hiding something. And so you got to be good at understanding to market to clients, past clients, but more importantly, those people that look up you and look who you are, which we've done separate teachings on that, because it makes a difference in terms of, they're all secretly looking you up. We talked about that. I think the data showed 90+% of people look up the agent they speak with and get an email from before doing business with them. And so that's just something that's very, very important to look at with you guys as well. Now, this key thing. A lot of people just say, well, I'm just going to use AI. What's the problem with that? It's not authentic. It's not real. People can see through it in 2 seconds. Now, we talked this a lot in Warrior yesterday. One of the things that you want to do is kind of, I want you guys to write this, me first, AI second. So you can use AI to help you fine tune stuff, but you don't want to use AI to help write everything for you. Why? That most of the time people can see through, and number two is not true a lot of the times. And so it's something that people can really understand as AI's got more relevant and more mainstream. People see on it, and does it help you or does it turn them off? It turns them off, right? The minute I see something that I can see through as AI, it turns off. Now, I can train my AI to speak like me and talk like me and things like that, which is something I'll be able to do, but I still write what I want first, or at least articulate what I want first in a way, and then have them be able to clean it up for me. And then I go back again after that. What do? Edit it. To make sure it's in my voice, and that I'm understanding that now I can use it for its sales skills, right? And get assigned to the role of a top copywriter, of one of the best people out there, and how they write and how they do things. But it's important you make sure that you go back through that. And so how do I get really good at this? I got to study marketing. I got to make a commitment this year to make sure I study to my personal development. Number two, I got to study closing. If I had to give you guys the most important one in the short term, you guys need to understand closing first at a deep level. Like Grant Cardone, objection handling, how do we know? Well, 188 phone calls, conversations, 27 appointments. That's the lowest hanging fruit. In addition to that, the second lowest hanging fruit is going to be the marketing side. Well, you can study both, right? I do both each week consistently. I make time to do it in the mornings. I make time to do it in the evenings. I invest in coaches to help me do it. podcasts in the car, like it's important to understand you want to make sure you're constantly reprogramming your mind here. Roman, what are you hearing from that? That's the number one thing that anybody can do is just master personal development first quarter, stick with your disciplines, and your whole life will be different, right? But the number one rule of marketing is I must get attention, right? Or the first rule of marketing is to get attention, right? The second most important, the second thing, but the most important rule is I must do what? Build trust. And the third piece after that comes a transaction. And here's the crazier part. We talked about this a lot yesterday. So, get the attention, get the trust, sign them as a client, write the offer up, get the listing. Then what has to happen? I got to start remarketing to them over and over and over for what? The next process. Here's what a listing data is. Here's what the prices are. Here's why I need you to come down on price. Oh yeah, if you're under contract as a buyer, hey, you made a great decision. It's a constant. I'm trying to find a marker that works. Marketing basically looks like this the entire transaction. Only thing is, right, I'm marketing the entire time. So lead comes in, I'm marketing, try to get them face-to-face, book the appointment, right? I market to have them do what? Show up to the appointment, right? Here's why you show up, here's what should happen, here's what's going to happen when you do show up, right? Then they show up to the appointment, I sign them, then what I got to do? It starts all over. Market them to go look at properties. Market them to pick up their top 10. Market them they made the right decision with me. Market to them why I'm so good and how I can help them. Why Myrtle Beach is so good, right? And then all of a sudden now I go under contract. Guess what I got to do? Market them to stay under contract. You made a great decision. Here's why it's going to work out great for you. Here's why it's going to help your family. Here's how you're going to avoid the pain of being in 6 inches of snow up north, wherever the guy this morning we were talking about is. Like that's just the whole process. But you got to understand, as an identity of a marketer, this is my entire game. Everything I do is about marketing. But so many agents do what? Get the client and just stop doing what they're supposed to do. And that's okay because most of them don't know that, but today you guys know that. And you have to understand that, like, no matter what I'm doing, now here's the crazy part. I close the deal, then what I got to start doing? Marketing them for their referrals. Hey, Chris, right, my business is built on referrals. The most valuable thing you ever do for me is help send me a referral, right? And I'm going to call you month one. Hey, Chris, how's the house doing, man? I'll call you week one, then week two, and guess what I'm doing? How's the house doing? How can I help you? Can you need a plumber, need an electrician, need anything discount-wise? Hey, oh yeah, by the way, my business is built on referrals. Anybody know looking to buy or sell, please do me a favor, have them give me a call. Make sense? And I'm constantly doing what? But if I live this identity, what happens to my business? Grows like crazy and life becomes a lot easier. Resistance comes a lot less. And so that's another key thing that you guys understand. And so if you do it right, I'm solving a problem, and then guess what I'm doing? I create a new problem by solving that problem, so now I got to solve that problem. Now market them to get to the new problem, which is obviously now we got to find you a house, or we got to get your listing under contract. And so part of that's constantly marketing. But if I just call my seller and say, hey, we should drop the price, but I haven't marketed to them with data information that they can understand that influences them in how they see the world and the worldview, guess what? It's going to be very difficult for me to close in the back end. Make sense? And so you have to be a combination of both these to be successful and have that at a high level. Carlos, what are you hearing from that? Just in the lesson we talked about. Would that make sense, though? I mean, I think, like, looking back, if we went by, that's, again, I tell you, don't like to call, but I think it's a great learning lesson for everybody. And it's like you did, so anything wrong, it's just a matter of knowing, like, going back of, like, hey, if I gave the data, because when I look at data, the first thing I go to is, like, okay, what's the data? How do I use this? Because I want to take them from what we call fantasy to fact. Everybody that's angry at you is because they're living in fantasy. How do we know that? Because if it's priced right, it would have already sold. And so the reality is I got to take them from fantasy, whatever it is, in fact, and no matter what, they're going to fight me on it. And I can be cool, calm, and collected. Hey, I totally understand you feel that way. I appreciate that. But the problem with that is that there's 8 condos less than us in our building that still have not sold yet. And let's say we were to pass it, and even with the price that low is, guess what? There's still a 50% chance of sales, and the ones that do sell are 130 days. We're on day 55. So it's simply the math doesn't math, right? And so no matter how angry she wants to get about whatever, when they say, well, I don't like comps. You ever had that before? Yep. Hey, I don't like gravity or math, but they're real. So we don't have to like them, but the fact is that they're real because that's what buyers see your house as. And so that's important to do to be able to have them, but this is, the gravity or math thing, that's a closing, right? And that backs up my marketing in terms of what I do. But they have to be in alignment, have to be really good at doing this. Does it make sense, you guys? It's just a great lesson example I want to talk about that I think would be helpful. Question or feedback, anybody? Jeremy, what's your take on that, and being in this for a while?
Yeah, I think as you're going through it, the two things that pop in my head is like, one is a pre-frame from the beginning. You're telling them, hey, when you're talking about pricing, we can try it higher, but realistically, this is where we need to be. This is what we should be seeing. If we're not seeing this, then we're going to be doing this. So, and to get them to agree upon it. And then what I do, I started a few months ago, is sending an email afterwards. Hey, pleasure meeting you. Here's a copy of your agreement. This is what we spoke about. This is what we agreed to do if we're not getting these results. That way, have it in writing, right? Before I ask for the price reduction. One thing that we did over the summer with the lady, I can't remember her name, but the price reduction lady. Yes.
Yeah.
She talked about building grace for people, right? Which comes from communication. I think that's a big part of it as well. But and showing the data too. Like if someone came to me and said, "You got to do this," and what are you talking about? This person's crazy. But if you show them the data, and then you ask them, "Hey, after reviewing all the data, what do you think the data is telling us?" Ask your question instead of telling them. You ask, "Hey, what do you think?"
That's mastering, right? Closing, right?
And then they tell you some crazy answer. Okay, hey, I get that. So after seeing this at this and that, you think this is saying this? Really, show me the data. You think this says that, right? So you're not really like telling them what to do, but you're asking them questions to get to the right answer. Mm-hmm. So that way, it's their idea as opposed to your idea.
Mm-hmm. Just know if you get into the pool of emotions, you're done every time. But if I can create a box of facts that they can't get out of, I have all the leverage in terms of what I do. That's why every phone call matters, every text message matters to make sure I have that document to go through. Because if I can have your back, I can go back through, hey, Jeremy called you every 2 weeks for this amount of time. He told you this time you need to reduce the price, this time reduce the price, and then I have the ability to back you up. But it always comes down to just setting managed expectations, which is just a lack of effectiveness of marketing and closing. So I'm constantly marketing my client to either get the price down to correct it if it's priced too high, or my buyer, I'm constantly marketing them to keep their loyalty and to then move forward. Does that make sense? And so, and that's what I want to talk about. I was interviewing a couple people. I actually interviewed a guy yesterday, a different company. His biggest struggle last year is he said he feel like he's shown 1,000 properties and no one's writing the offers up. What does that mean? He's not good at closing, right? And so I went through and showed him, hey, look, here's our showing process. Here's things that we can do. Here's like our pre-frame that we send the email the night before. Here's our showing checklist. It shows you rank each property 1 to 5. You have them do it out. And so with that, what we're doing, we're forcing them to help close themselves, but I'm managing set their expectations. And I told them, hey, before we ever go on showings, we want to meet with that client and say, hey, we got 5 properties you're looking at today. We have one single goal. Do you know what that is? Pause. We're here to find the one and buy the one. That's it, right? So we go in there. You see anything you don't like, you tell me in 2 seconds you don't like it, walk back out. But you find the one that you think is the one, which means if you like it, other buyers don't like it, we have to pull the trigger quickly. But we're here with one single intention today, to find you the one. So what does that do? That sets their expectations and their intensity in terms of what their intention is to make a decision to buy, not just play HGTV and look at some houses, right? And that's what most people are doing. So most agents just end up being chauffeurs because they can't close. And so they're just driving people around hoping they like something enough to actually pull the trigger. But if I set the conditions around it and I set the right intention around it, now they're forced to make a decision on each and every house. Is the one, is not the one. And now we're forcing them to make the decision, which is what they need. It's what they want. They're here to buy a property. My job is to help create conditions, help them make a decision and walk through that right door. Does that make sense? Most agents just aren't taking time to think through it and set the right conditions for them to make good decisions. And that's our fault. Make sense?